Hey, it's Jordan. I'm delighted to be joined by several workers at an Amazon in North Carolina. Obviously, there's been a ton of focus on the workers who were victorious in Staten Island, which we covered for over a year. But there is now kind of that domino effect I've been talking about, and workers currently interested and starting to organize at other Amazon warehouses. So I'm delighted to be joined by Tim. Uh, Destiny, Albert. So let me start. I'll start with Albert. Talk to me about how long you've been working there at the Amazon, one of many Amazons, probably in North Carolina, and when you first became interested in organizing.
Um, so I began working at RDU1, which is in Garner, Raleigh, North Carolina, in September of 2020. So this September will be 2 years that I've been there. And I became interested in organizing when I saw the disservice, the dissatisfaction of many of my fellow employees. Um, Things that they were being faced with, some being faced with racism, some being faced with sexualism, if you will, some being faced with just not being treated fairly around the board, as far as from promotions to being acknowledged for the actual work they do and the numbers that they put out. So I saw a need there, a need of the people for sure, to get something organized, to do some organizing, and to get something started to have so everyone, not only myself, but everyone would have a voice.
And I saw that significantly in Staten Island, that the pandemic, things that were already wrong at Amazon only got worse. You saw, more in terms of racial discrimination and other things down there during the pandemic.
Absolutely. So, racial discrimination being something that they try to hide behind the trenches, if you will, but it's definitely prevalent. It's definitely, you feel it in the building. You feel it amongst your coworkers. Um, just you feel it all around. Period. Some people are more. Um, I'll say some people are probably more prone to it than others. Um, and some people that actually dish out that type of behavior, um, they're more bold to actually be racist against you.
Mhm.
You see it a lot in promotions specifically. I noticed that there is a very wide range of management that, and nothing against my fellow white brothers or sisters, but you notice there's more of the Caucasian employees that are easily or quicker or easy or quicker promoted than some of the African Americans are, even some of the Hispanics, even some of the Latinos. I've seen a few Hispanic Latinos in there, but not a whole lot.
Mhm. Right. And what about you, Destiny? Because in Staten Island and elsewhere, uh, we I heard similar that people of color, women, were not promoted or really got the same opportunities as a lot of their white counterparts. And in terms of managers, there was very, very rarely even internal promotion. They usually brought people from the outside.
Um, yeah, so specifically with management, like it's kind of plain to see like that like if you just working or walking around the facility, wide majority black and brown people. But if you look at the PAs, if you look at the process assistants and the managers, it's like just increasingly whiter the farther up you go. And it's like it's obvious, like you couldn't not notice essentially. Um, and it's just really clear. It wasn't necessarily the first thing that made me want to organize at Amazon. Like I had started working at RDU5, which is the location in Durham. And I started working there in 2020. And in 2020, it was just like so clear that everyone there was working 2 or 3 jobs. And that at RDU5, most people are working on a flex shift, and that they change your length of the shift while you're on it, right? So sometimes it's longer, sometimes it's shorter. And so people like, it interferes with childcare, interferes with your other job when you don't know how long your shift is, literally. It interferes with what your paycheck's going to be. And it's just like that, and just safety during COVID in general. Like, they never took safety seriously, never would let you know where people were when they had COVID, just say like, oh, there has been COVID in the building.
Mhm.
Just like, so, you wouldn't know if they were like next to you, if they were on your shift. It's like, it was just a heads up like that. And
Right.
yeah.
And, Amazon makes a big deal that, they started $15 minimum wage. They weren't always that way. They had to be forced. But I've seen in New York, there's people working full time at Amazon that are sleeping in their cars because they can't afford rent in New York. Can you kind of talk about wages there? Are a lot of workers working multiple jobs while working at Amazon? Are the wages enough to live? Whatever they're paying you down in North Carolina?
I don't know who wants to speak on that, but I can, as speaking from personal experience. I had to pick up a job at McDonald's um, after working a group. So just what one of my days consists of, I get up about 4 in the morning and prepare myself to get on the road because it's from where I live. It's an hour drive from where I live to the front door of Amazon. So I'm up at 4, so that's already 12 hours. And then I go in, that's already 2 hours. I go in and work 10, so that's 12 hours. I get off and drive another hour home. So now we're looking at 13 hours. And after a 13-hour day, I have to go home, come home and put on a whole different uniform and go to McDonald's and stand there to work for 5 or 6 hours to
Jesus.
compensate for what Amazon is not paying. And to be quite honest, at some point in time, I thought about picking up, I don't know where I was going to find the time, but I thought about picking up a third job part time um, on my days off because McDonald's was being done like right after my shift at Amazon. Right after I drive home from Amazon and get off the road, I would go straight to McDonald's. And so that was, I worked 4 days at Amazon, 4 or 5 days at McDonald's. And then I was still thinking about picking up another job because even McDonald's wasn't enough to compensate.
Right. And do you have children?
I don't. I have a mother that depends on me. She gets a little bit of a small income, but as far as rent is concerned, utilities are concerned, just basic needs to live every day, my mother depends on me. So I don't have children, but I do have a mother that I look after.
So when you're working crazy hours between multiple jobs and you have an elder to care for, that is pretty rough in terms of your own, physical health and balance.
Yeah, I found myself falling asleep standing on my feet. I used to hear people say all the time that you would say that only horses can sleep standing up. Well, I'm living witness that they can't. That humans can too. And I would find myself many times on the floor falling asleep, and I'd have to pull my safety strap and walk away to go get me a cup of water or go somewhere cool so I could splash some water on my face and wake up because I was literally just tired. I would, in other words, as fast as I would lay down, alarm would be going off, and it'd be time to get up and go to another job.
Right. And Tim, what about you? How long have you worked down there? And do you have similar stories to what you're hearing from Destiny and Albert?
Countless. So I've been working there since September of 2020. So same, I don't know. Albert and I got on Amazon at the same time. I work at the RDU5 facility, so a lot of us are part time. I was working there originally because I was starting my own business in the financial services sector and needed some supplemental income, especially during COVID. But you did notice I'll go back to just my previous work, like just looking at, well, start where I'm from Long Island, from New York. And growing up in New York and seeing that how you have growing up around working class sustainability. My father was a union construction worker, and growing up on a block where it was minorities that worked these great union jobs, would be post office, steel workers, whatever it was, and being able to have, a life with, a family. Most of the time it was one parent working, the other parent looking after children and, holding a house down, and just having that sustainability and that true American dream, what originally was. And then coming down here, it was a definite shock, just seeing how the South and how it's the exploitation. And unfortunately, fast forward until now, actually, before I was working at Amazon, I was up in New York working in the city, and you see the same thing. They talk about like Long Island, they talk about New York. It's kind of like it has been. Like the unions are really, really, struggling nowadays. So, working at Amazon, you hear a lot about our generation, millennials and Gen Z, and they talk about us being like lazy. And you actually go to these warehouses and you see the Uber and Lyft stickers on the cars. It's sometimes their second and third job, working there. And I assume the same thing with the full-time people at RDU1 in Garner, North Carolina. And like, I'll give you some instances in terms of the racism. I made it clear when I was there that I am building something, my own business. This is purely for supplemental income. I was offered like management jobs. I've been offered it 3 times after like turning it down multiple times. But I have like one of my coworkers, he's Asian, and he was on the point of almost quitting, and he had a family to raise. And this guy I was part-time, he was full-time, trying to get the same position I was getting. And I remember talking to him one day and he was dejected. And we have plenty of stories like this, but it's just like, this one actually, he actually wants the job. He's actually putting in the work for the job, but you can see that clear disparity in treatment. And you kind of know what it is. Like a lot of people are like, oh, you look like someone that could lead this place or something like that. I'm like, I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Privilege, thank you, but that is, call a spade, that's wrong. They were managers, and we'll talk about like the wages being terrible. I mean, I've talked to managers that were tier 3, and this is a promotion that they're offering me 3 weeks in, and continue to offer me throughout my first year. But these are promotions that usually take a year or 2 to get to. And I was talking to managers that were in these positions and didn't have cars. Even people that have had these like 1-level promotions. I was talking to them as recently as last week, and with inflation and everything that's going on, there are whole conversations around when are we going to get a raise in these wages. The MIT living wage calculator calculates that a living wage in Raleigh, North Carolina is around $19.75 an hour. And you have a company that profited in 2021, I believe, at 33. This is net profits of 33 billion. And then you have like management that can't have a car. Your entry level people have 2 or 3 jobs. And we're talking about, because we have these complaints, and I wouldn't even call them complaints. We have these people coming to us and they're concerned and they're having these mental breakdowns, and like, we don't have food to last through the weekend to feed our kids. So we're, as a group cause, we're setting up food banks. And it's just, in this country with the vast amount of wealth, being one of the more successful companies in the world, that's just morally terrible. It's wrong. And so, yeah, I mean, like, just seeing that. And then, there was a group of activists that were flyering and SWA that I got involved in around the time that Chris Smalls was fired. And then eventually we found a core group of very capable individuals. We've got 2 board directors here on the call with us. And yes, it's just really picked up, and it's just something that, while I was thinking of quitting, one of our slogans is "Don't quit, organize," and it's just something that I think the feeling's mutual with everybody, our whole core group, and a lot of our members is, we're not going to quit, we're not going anywhere, we're going to be successful with this. So
right. By the way, I'm from Long Island, Massapequa. So shout out.
Massapequa.
Yeah, I'm from Massapequa originally.
I'm right outside of Elmont,
Okay.
South Wilbur. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you also, because a common thing I was hearing in Staten Island was basically, I mean, you guys are treated like robots, basically surveilled by the second to see your productivity. If you go into the bathroom for too long, or your break is over by a minute, you know, you might get a talking to from managers. Can you kind of talk about how you're treated by Amazon, by managers down there, as far as your productivity? And you know, any experiences you've had in the treatment in terms of how fast you have to work, any threats you've received if they don't deem you working fast enough, that kind of stuff. Anybody?
So I'll chime in, and possibly what you're speaking of. It's called TOT, time off task, and these tasks are minutes that are seconds that are calculated from the time you stow. Well, for instance, I'm working in the stow department. So from the time you stow your last item, from the time you stow your first item, the time in between there that you stow the next item would be considered time off. So if you don't, let me put it like this. I think there's a 15-second or 20-second time frame in which you have to, in between stowing items. So if you stow one item and you have 10 minutes in between the time that you stow another item, that's considered time off task. Too much of that will get you a write-up. Too much of that will get you what's called a first and a final. Generally, management will come around and they'll say, well, you have this amount of TOT time off task. And they'll want to know where you were, what you were doing, and why it took you so long. At that point in time, you have to kind of backtrack in your mind where you were, if you were at the bathroom, if you walked, which would take you probably 10 minutes to walk to the break room to get a drink. If you simply maybe got a very important phone call that you had to step off the floor and take. And in my case, with the issues that I have going on right now, there have been plenty of days I've gotten phone calls from various different people that have been trying to reach out to me, and I've had to say, hey, I'm at work, I can't talk right now, can I call you later? But these things are considered, and you will get written up for them. Just on Friday or Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, one of my coworkers, fellow stores, sent me a text, and she said, I have to ask you a question. I said, okay. I said, that's fine. She said, so who is the guy that's walking around, kind of tall guy, glasses with a ball cap on us? And I told her who he was, or who I thought she was speaking of. And he actually came up to her and he told her that everyone else is stowing at this particular rate. Why are your rates so low? You need to get your rates up. And if you can't get your rates up, then we're going to have to move you somewhere else. This is exactly what he told her. And she texted me verbatim. And I told her, I was like, don't worry about it. Just do the best you can. I was like, and if you feel like you're just too tired, or you're just worn out, or he's asking too much of you, I was like, just go to another member of management, you know, and see what you can do. Or I told her, so if he's really badgering you, see if you may have some UPT time, and maybe you can leave a little bit early, you know, if you're having a bad day. They say they understand if you're having a bad day, but they really don't. They really could care less. Because if your rates fall below a certain percentage or below a certain standard, they're on you like literally white on rice, literally. They'll come around wanting to know what they can do to help, what they can do. And once you tell them what they can do to help, they may come around and help you for 30 minutes. After that, it's, are you okay? Can you handle it from this point? And they walk off and leave. You don't see nobody else for the rest of the day.
Right. And Destiny, do you have similar experiences? Because you get this PR message from Amazon with the hundreds of millions of dollars they spend on these commercials, and everything's wonderful. and they pay for your school and all these things. They leave out kind of all of this. But what's been your experience in terms of kind of the relationship with management and whether they are pretty aggressive with you and other workers in terms of your productivity?
Yeah, so what they told us during training was that you should shoot for 12 seconds between packages. So like between stowing one package and the next package, that it should be 12 seconds in between. And 12 seconds, like, you can't tell what you're going to be stowing, right? You might be stowing pins, you might be stowing medicine balls, right? And it's 12 seconds in between. You could have to be breaking down boxes in between. They want you to have a 12-second between stow. And so you're doing, like, the shift that I work a 12.5-hour shift. And you're trying to move at this insane rate. You got to climb like the positions, like you have to stow on shelves that go way above my head. So I have to climb up on a ladder, up and down all night. 12 seconds is what they want it to be. And it's relentless. Even if it's not heavy stuff, it's just the repetitive task, like wear down on your hands. And I would say, honestly, worst part to me is like just standing at that period of time, like, is just bad for your feet. Like your feet, everyone's feet are aching at the end of the day because you've been standing like just on concrete for this amount of time. And it's not sustainable. They, like, Amazon with their corporate attempts at pretending like they care about the conditions for workers, they put in these little wellness minutes every so often. I'm going to say every 4 hours maybe. And but in the wellness minutes, if you look around, what everyone does during a wellness minute is sit down, is because everyone is just like grateful for like a second to get off your feet. And it's like, I'm 25. I'm on the younger end of people on this panel, but it's people as young as me that are just like kind of can't take it. You see like these young, healthy people who kind of just like as soon as little button dings and they ask you like for your minute to stretch, everyone just sits down because they like the relent in the pressure.
Right. And talk to me now about kind of taking these frustrations and now trying to organize. Has management said anything to you about this? Have they tried to cut it off right away? Obviously, you guys are different than Staten Island. North Carolina is a right to work state, which exists to stop unions. So that's a whole nother can of worms and obstacle. It wasn't easy for the Staten Island workers to win, but at least in New York, it's not a right to work state. They have a higher percentage of the workforce is unionized. Has management, Amazon, said anything to you guys, tried to intimidate you to not organize? What has been the process now as you start to try and organize and, show there's enough interest to get a union election?
So, I'll respond first and I'll kick it to Albert or Tim. First thing I would say is most of the focus on contact and surveillance have been on Ryan and Albert because they were the first people to be public with their affiliation with Cause. And that beyond that, I think that they are almost trying to diffuse our momentum with concessions. But we don't see that as diffusing because we own that, oh, you guys started an appeals board because it was on our petition. You guys responded to our demands for UPT, right? Like that we recognize their responses as because we are putting pressure on them. But they're like, so the concessions, I would say, are the first things that I'm seeing, and added surveillance on some of our leadership.
And then I'll shoot it to Tim. Real short with me, it's known that they've seen some of the media footage that the first interview I did with the news and things like that, because now, just last week, what's happening now is I get out of my car. Just last week, I came in the building, and this guy that clearly he was in management, but to tell you his name and who he is, I honestly cannot tell you. But the first thing he said to me walking into the door was, "Good morning, Albert. How are you and how's your day?" And I'm thinking, I've never spoken to you a day since I've worked here. I've never, let alone seen you, other than a poster or a picture or something, since I started in September of almost 2 years ago. And now you know my name. That's a bit odd, and I won't say uncomfortable, but it just lets me know that yeah, you guys know that we are here, and you've seen and heard what you need to hear and then some. Doesn't make me uncomfortable, because again, I'm not doing this for me. I'm doing this for everyone. But I just thought it was a bit weird, and I just kind of gave him a little cheesy grin, like, now you know my name, and it's been almost 2 years, and I've never ever encountered you at all. So it's the things that they're doing, and I looked up one day, and this was shortly after the interview with Spectrum News ran. I was at my tow station. I stepped out to load my sled with work, and I stepped out into the middle of the aisle, and I looked to the left of me, and it seemed to me that every manager that was in the front office was on my floor at that particular time. And they stayed there probably about 30 or 40 minutes. No one ever said anything to me. You had a couple of them walk past and, "Hey, Albert, how are you? And how's your day going?" And I, the same response. I was like, "How do you guys know my name? You've never spoken to me a day in your life." Not a day that I've walked into Amazon from September up until now have you guys ever mentioned my name, let alone acknowledge my presence, even in the building.
Right.
Tim?
I would say that what I've seen in terms of intimidation, one, our president was written up, and he's never had a write up in the years that he's been there. I think he's been there for like 3 years, and he's never had a write up. And then he had one not too long after we had like our first media appearance on WRAL, which is like a local news station here. No, sorry, Spectrum, which is actually national. I think that was probably our first, which was the local Spectrum, and then Albert actually made national on the Spectrum with his story. That was around the time that Ryan was our president was written up. We have seen an uptick in write-ups, but I think that's more towards the company. I guess more of just injustice because they overhired, and they're I think they are targeting and doing write-ups to what they call trim the fat, get rid of employees. Right. I know when we went leafleting, and this is kind of interesting because Amazon's made the news in terms of parking lot drama at Amazon. Well, some terrible things have happened. But when we went leafleting, they came out to us and checked all our badges. And it was kind of like, we felt like that was them trying to intimidate us and make us feel like we were doing something wrong. But recently, Amazon has gotten to some hot water, and there's a law firm down in Memphis, Tennessee, because a woman was shot in their parking lot. And this was, she had told Amazon that there was like a restraining order, and it was someone very violent, was a former employee that had been fired. And it's just interesting that they took it more serious, us leafleting, than actually having prevent security and preventing someone to come on to the premises with a gun. But yeah, so I guess, that's one way that a form of intimidation. And on top of that, there has been some targeted write-ups.
Got it. And my final question, obviously every place is different, but what's the strategy? Obviously, the successful workers in Staten Island did it from the ground up. Workers talking to other workers, being outside the warehouse every day. delivering free food to workers, talking to workers, really just kind of a grassroots effort, worker to worker. What's your strategy to, spread the word, get, maybe persuade some of the skeptical folks or people who don't know anything about a union? What's your strategy in the organizing process to get an election and then, of course, to win?
We are grassroots worker led. That's our strategy. We are looking at the success at ALU, and we are focusing our efforts on reaching out to our coworkers. And I feel like we're well aware that our Amazon management views our media appearances. And so I'm not sure if we're going to share all of our recruitment tactics with them as well. But that's what we're going to do. We are going to focus on listening to our coworkers, meeting the needs that they've told us, reaching out everywhere we can. We've one thing that they are aware that we do, and that's very obvious because it's outside the building. We flyered, and that's something that we missed in the retaliation section, is that they did something similar to what they did in Bessemer. They changed the way one of the lights work, where they knew that we were flyering at the stoplight, and they changed it so it's like a continuous yellow light instead of a light that turns red, so people have to stop. But that's a small thing. But we're doing grassroots. We're not associating with any established union. We are forming our own union.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And like Destiny said, just continue to build relationships with our coworkers and our fellows, continue to educate them on what their rights are. First of all, letting them know that they do have rights, and letting them know, educating them on what their rights are, what they can and can't do, what Amazon can and can't do. We want to be able to uplift people and encourage people. As Tim mentioned, our slogan is to don't quit, organize. So we want to be able to uplift the people that may want to quit or may want to give up, to just kind of encourage them to hang in there and stay the course along with us. And then you're saying just to empower, if you will. But the main piece is to educate people, because you have a lot of people that don't understand what the union is for, what they're about. And a lot of information is being put out there. A lot of false information is being put out there about unions and organizing. And again, we just want to build those good, solid relationships, and in solidarity and in support of all people.
Absolutely. And lastly, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I would say they both summed up very well. Empower, educate, and engage, and we're building community too. And I think there's that's fought on several fronts. So with social media, grassroots, I think, is the most important. Peer-to-peer at the workplace. But we're also just networking with each other and seeing how we could leverage our networks and get the community engaged as well.
Absolutely. And my last question, you hear a lot of talk from President Biden and others that the economy is, doing well, unemployment's low, historic economic recovery. But I don't know, when I go around, all I see is people working multiple jobs, making crap wages, barely have benefits. What does it say, that this narrative by the media, by politicians, that things are better, when in reality, you all are just basically fighting not to be treated like robots and to have some basic worker protections, treated with human dignity and make enough to live?
Well, I think, go ahead, sorry. I think that it is, it feels like they're out of touch, but I think it's also not so surprising. Growing up, we're probably in a recession right now, or heading into one very soon. As millennials, we had to deal with recession after recession, and the pandemic and we're just kind of used to this, the politicking. You know, they're coming close up to a midterm and they want to do damage control, and they're just going to try to feed us and spin it so they can win office. And we're not surprised, one, with the politicking and the spin, but also, you know, it comes from both sides. And also with, you know, the corruption and the glad handing and the way our system is set up, we're used to, you know, them being tone deaf when it comes to our needs, working class needs, and people that aren't. We don't have lobbyists, you know, backing us right now. So, or and I don't see when we will, but yeah, and I think a lot of it has to do with there's factors of like gig work, you know, some of the employment numbers are skewed because of how they measure it and how often you have like remote work has actually skewed some of these unemployment numbers to make or jobs available compared to employees that are, you know, looking for work, and it skews the numbers in terms of remote jobs are counted multiple times. So I mean, it's just, but yeah, I mean, like we're seeing it. A lot of these jobs are not. I mean, like when I talked about MIT living wage in this area is 1975. And that is for a single individual with no kids. And I've looked at the numbers and how they measure it. That's not counting saving for retirement. And that has a compounding effect, a negative one, just like saving does for retirement has a positive compounding effect. And it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just, we are kind of, I feel like we're dejected, disconnected from, we're over looking for politicians to save us. I mean, we want to protect the past. It would be great. But that's why we're so focused on building community, because, you know, us together practicing group economics and looking out for each other and looking out for our fellow workers is going to be more effective, and it'll make us more powerful as a unit going forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with the question about the economy, the things that when they talk about the economy doing well, they, you know, the economy is going well for like Jeff Bezos. During the recession, the trillionaires and billionaires got richer. It just didn't come down to us, but we're the people who made the trillionaires richer. Like when everybody was shopping online because they were afraid to go to the stores, and we were the people stacking the pallets of toilet paper, right? Like that was us. We created that wealth. It just didn't return to us. And when workers don't have power, we aren't able to fight for what we deserve. We aren't able to get our own due. And that's what we're doing. We're not waiting for Joe Biden to acknowledge that, you know, it's not fair for all the wealth to go to the top. We are making our demands where we are to get what we deserve, to get our due here. And so, like, when the economic numbers say, like, oh, look, there are more jobs than ever, they don't care that those are part-time jobs. They don't care that those jobs don't have benefits or are temporary or contract work, right? It's kind of like that freedom for the snake is tyranny for the mice, that like what's good for the economy's measure is not necessarily what's good for us. And we need to recognize that the economic markers and the presidents, and they're not on the same team as us. Like they don't spend all day calling us for donations. They spend all day calling the corporation and the owners class for donations. And then they are in their pocket afterwards. And that's why we're relying on ourselves. That's why it's our own empowerment that we are going through to get what we deserve.
Right. Any parting thoughts, Albert?
I don't. I'm just in agreement so far. Just very simple. For them to think that the economy is okay, absolutely not. I mean, we're struggling from day to day. You know what I'm saying? By the thousands, we're struggling every day. And when you have to talk about people going to have to work 2 and 3 jobs, that's a bit of a struggle. That's enough being said that the economy is not okay. Um, when you're putting $20-$25 worth of gas in your vehicle, it's only getting you a quarter tank of gas. Very simply, that tells me that the economy is not okay. When you have to go in the grocery stores and you have to decide whether you're going to buy food for a meal to last just for the day or for the entire week, that tells me that the economy is not okay. So that's where I am with it pretty much.
Right. Thank you, everybody. Tim, Destiny, Albert. People should follow what you guys are doing. It's called Carolina Amazonians United for Solidarity and Empowerment, short for CAUSE. And that's AmazonCause.com. If things go well, maybe you could be the second successful Amazon warehouse to unionize in America. And I'll definitely stay in touch with all of you because, you know, a lot of people are feeling deflated about electoral politics. And, you know, whoever they were supporting or whatever they did the last few years, they just see the same old, same old. So I think it's great that now workers are not waiting for DC, but are taking it into their own hands to try and better their lives. So thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you so much, Jordan. We appreciate
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for watching, and make sure to tune in to Status Coup's daily live stream Monday through Thursday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time and Fridays at 4 o'clock Eastern Time.